engagement optimized matchmaking does exist. Make no mistake, it is here and it's only going to get worse. Not only are there studies related to engagement optimized matchmaking, there are several patents owned by gaming conglomerates that strongly implies that this is already in play. I have to say imply, as solid proof doesn't exist. However, I'll let you make up your own mind as we go across the points in this video. Join me as we scratch the surface that is engagement optimized matchmaking. I recently made a video going over the history and structure of skill-based matchmaking, and it was brought to my attention that some of the aspects I was discussing was more leaning away from skill-based matchmaking and more towards something known as engagement optimized matchmaking. If you want some context on the history and how skill-based matchmaking works, I do encourage you to go watch my other video, but you do whatever you want to do, I'm not your dad. For now, let's get into the history and lore of engagement optimized matchmaking. Engagement optimized matchmaking is a framework designed to enhance players' engagement in online multiplayer games. Now, unlike skill-based matchmaking, which pairs players based on skill levels, engagement optimized matchmaking focuses on maximizing player engagement by considering various factors such as player behavior, preferences, and even spending habits. Engagement optimized matchmaking uses data to predict players' churn and pairs players in a way that minimizes this risk. You might be wondering what churn is. Churn is a term that refers to the likelihood of a player stopping or reducing their gameplay over a certain period. Its system uses churn data to predict when a player might leave the game. And what it will do is that it will adjust matchmaking to keep players engaged. For example, if a player is high risk of churning, the system might place them in matches which is more likely to keep them interested in playing longer. The concept of engagement optimized matchmaking was introduced into the public conscious by researchers from Northeastern University and Electronic Arts, and this was brought out in a paper that was published in 2017. Of course, Electronic Arts are involved. You want a quick reminder of who they are? Well, EA faced major backlash for its use of microtransactions and loot boxes, particularly in games like Star Wars Battlefront 2. If you remember, there were certain cards I think that you could purchase which would give you advantages such as better guns, so it basically became pay to win. Also, in 2021, leaked documents revealed that EA actively funnels players towards its heavily monetized FIFA Ultimate Team mode, otherwise known as FUT. It was then debated if FUT was basically gambling, especially since players often spend significant amounts of money on cards packs with low odds of obtaining top players. I don't really know what this means because I've never played FIFA, but I think there was a card collecting mode and you basically pay to collect cards. Anyway, let's get back to the initial research of engagement optimized matchmaking. Researchers found that there were limitations to skill-based matchmaking. The framework was developed to basically address these limitations. If you think about it, if you're constantly getting paired in really strict matches based on skill-based matchmaking, you're more likely to leave out of frustration. This is where engagement optimized matchmaking comes into play. Essentially, this paper demonstrated that engagement optimized matchmaking could significantly improve players' engagement compared to traditional matchmaking methods. Has engagement optimized matchmaking been implemented in modern games? I'm going to get to that a little bit later. Anyway, despite the controversy, engagement optimized matchmaking, it represents a significant shift in how game developers approach matchmaking and how they make multiplayer games. They want to prioritize long-term playing and satisfaction for player attention. This brings us on to how engagement optimized matchmaking is different from skill-based matchmaking. Like I previously discussed, engagement optimized matchmaking is focusing on player attention, whereas skill-based matchmaking focuses on fair games. The system uses a variety of data points, including player behavior, preferences, and even spending habits to create matches to keep players engaged for longer periods. It might mix skill levels to ensure players have a mix of easy and challenging games. You can see how this conflicts with the principles that skill-based matchmaking brings in. In a sense, there's going to be periods where it essentially feeds new players to the wolves. Let's now discuss the factors that engagement optimized matchmaking uses to keep players hooked. As a summary, here's some of the factors it takes into account. There very well could be a lot more, but we just don't know because a lot of the data relating around engagement optimized matchmaking isn't publicly known. So as previously discussed, one of the factors engagement optimized matchmaking takes into account is the churn rate. By understanding when a player is more likely to leave, the system is going to then adjust matchmaking in a way to do its best to keep someone playing. It also takes into account players' skill and performance. While similar to skill-based matchmaking, engagement-optimized matchmaking also considers recent performance to create matches that are challenging but not overly frustrating. It also takes into account player preferences and behavior, such as preferred playstyles and in-game actions, to tailor the game experience to the individual preferences. So it could basically look into how you play. This is something I discussed in my previous video, but if you're a more aggressive player, it's going to analyze that, which to me sounds kind of creepy. Engagement optimized matchmaking can also influence the distribution of in-game rewards to keep players motivated. By providing timely rewards, the system encourages continued play. How I interpret this, let's take a game like Destiny for example. I remember a time where I was playing with my mates and they were playing quite a bit to get a weapon called, I think it was called a Gjallarhorn. Now, they did certain strikes every week to try and get this weapon, and I wasn't really that big into Destiny, but I'll jump on every now and then, and after a month or two I got back on, did a strike, and they still hadn't got a Gjallarhorn. On that one strike that we did, I actually got it out of pure luck. Now looking back then I thought, wow, that's really lucky, but now when I look back at that, I feel as though there were systems in play to basically reward that to me, to basically get me to play Destiny more. It's not so conspiracy theory now. Remember how I glossed over the point of which games have implemented engagement optimized matchmaking? Well, several games they speculated to use engagement optimized matchmaking. I say speculated because the evidence is hard to come by and some companies outright deny it, but there's no reason for massive corporations to lie to us, so we can trust them. Now, one game suggested to use engagement optimized matchmaking is Apex Legends. Apparently, Apex Legends has been studied for its use of engagement optimized matchmaking to balance player retention and engagement. According to Respawn Entertainment, the developers of Apex Legends, the game relies on skill-based matchmaking. Respawn's principal coder, Michael Callas, confirmed that no one working on Apex Legends has read the engagement optimized matchmaking patent. To reiterate, remember that earlier study that I brought up? Well, yeah, that was created with the involvement of EA. And it was released in 2017. Apex Legends, released in 2019. I don't know man, the timing of that seems kinda sus. As well as Apex Legends, the Call of Duty series has been suggested to use engagement optimized matchmaking. There is a lot of debate within the community of how it works, if it's used. The biggest evidence, Activision, the publisher of the Call of Duty, holds patents related to engagement optimized matchmaking. These patents describe systems that could be used to optimize player engagement through matchmaking. However, the exact implementation details in specific games are not publicly confirmed. We have this patent here, we can see current assignee, Activision Publishing. I'm just going to read this abstract out. A system and method is provided that drives microtransactions in multiplayer video games. The system may include a microtransaction arrange matches to influence game-related purchases. For instance, the system may match a more expert player with a junior player to encourage the junior player to make game-related purchases of items possessed or used by the professional player. A junior player may wish to emulate the professional player by obtaining weapons or other items used by the professional player. Long story short, if you're a new player, you join a game, it may match you up with another guy who's unlocked a lot of stuff and you go, man, that looks pretty cool, I want that. That's not a conspiracy. It exists right here. We also have this other pattern here, the systems and methods for dynamically weighing match variables to better tune player matches. A matchmaking system and method is provided that facilitates optimization of player matches for multiplayer video games. The system may provide a generalized framework for matchmaking using historical player data and analytics. The framework may facilitate automatic determinations of an optimal mix of players and styles to produce the most satisfying user experiences. The system may dynamically update analytical processes based on statistical or otherwise observed data related to gameplay at any given time. In this manner, the system may continually tune the matchmaking process based on observations of player behavior, gameplay quality, and/or other information. But no, they're not using any of that. They only have the rights to it. Brings us on to our last game that is suggested to use engagement optimized matchmaking, and that is the FIFA series. Now, I've never played FIFA, but I can fully see how from a microtransaction and a gaming experience why they want to optimize that as much as possible. Engagement optimized matchmaking, it obviously brings up a lot of ethical implications. I think the biggest one being is player manipulation. It's analyzing people in a kind of perverse way to try and create this optimal gaming experience rather than just let the game be. Like, the game, I think, should just have a natural matchmaking system, and that is the best way to experience a game. Call me crazy. I also don't think that corporations are doing this for the consumer experience, but it's going to bring in another point that I want to discuss, and that is addiction risk. I think a lot of these are put into place to try and keep people gaming as long as possible, trying to get them to purchase whatever they can out of the store. I think that's the true reason why engagement optimized matchmaking is being put in. Not to make a better experience, but rather to get the players hooked, get them spending, because that's why corporations here, right? To make money. It also brings in a bit of a privacy concern. There is a lot of data being collected on players, how they spend, how they play. Like I said, it's kind of perverse. And one of the biggest things that I think is wrong with this is that even though they're saying that these systems are not in play, they obviously are. And I think they should just be transparent about it. The corporations and gaming companies, they should be transparent about even skill-based matchmaking, how engagement optimized matchmaking and how skill-based matchmaking work, or what they're analyzing, what they're looking for. But I think a big reason why they're not brings me on to another point, which is the regulations. Currently, there are no specific regulations that directly govern engagement optimized matchmaking. However, there are several broader regulations and guidelines that impact how engagement optimized matchmaking is implemented. Now, there are data privacy laws, there is also consumer protection laws, and there are general gaming industry guidelines. The big problem with all these things that I've just discussed is, while these guidelines are not legally binding, it means there is a lot of grey area. So these corporations are going to have some pretty smart lawyers, and they're going to know how to basically navigate this landscape. It's a little bit like the Wild West. Whatever systems they have in play, skill-based matchmaking or engagement optimized matchmaking, they're basically exploiting players. They're analyzing into psychological vulnerabilities and are basically trying to get people hooked into their games. I think this is really bad within mobile games. Like, it is the Wild West there. They're just doing whatever they can to get players to purchase their tokens, whatever they can do to get them into the store. Overall, I think it would be nice if gaming companies were transparent about what they're putting in their games. I think at this point, that's unlikely. We're going to have to see how this evolves over time, but until then, enjoy your day.